Good evening, First Baptist Bethlehem. Thank you for joining us for our fifth week of Table Talk, our Lenten discussion that, of course, has taken a radically different look than when we started it a little over a month ago. Really glad you have taken time to join us tonight. Last week we had a lot of fun recording this. Heard a lot of really positive feedback from you that it was meaningful, and we're really appreciative of that. Tonight we wanted to try to do it live and be a little more interactive. So we're all learning together, and I'm really grateful for each of you for joining us. The theme that we had planned out for tonight was about how we do life together and encourage one another, be an encouraging community. And I don't know about you, but today I need some encouragement. Probably run out of ways to say we're in unprecedented times, but never in my life has the governor issued a stay-at-home order. So I need some encouragement today. And I thought about this verse, 1 Thessalonians 5:11. It says, "Therefore encourage one another, and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing." That's my goal. My hope for tonight is that this will be a time of building up for all of us, a time of encouragement for all of us. We're going to look at some Bible verses and have some discussion, but we also want to hear from you. Vicki has her phone out, and if you have a question, a comment that you'd like to add to our discussion, please chime in, because we'd love to hear from you.
On that, a technical note, there is a 15 to 20 second delay. So if someone tries to come in with a question, they need to know that our response is going to be a little slow, because Vicki won't get it for 15 to 20 seconds.
I can't hold my train of thought that long.
We're doomed.
But thinking about being encouraging, what are you seeing? What are you doing in this time of social distancing that you wouldn't normally do? And what's been positive for you, but also what's been negative for your spiritual formation? Any thoughts?
I think in terms of community, those who had that before this happened, who had those groups of people, who had those people they went to one-on-one who they trusted, they're finding those new ways already to be in community with people any way they can, whether it's on Zoom or a phone call or a text message. Those who didn't experience that were on an island before all this began, are still on that island and find themselves unique. And they don't know where to go to find that interaction that they need so badly, that community. So I think, one of the things we have to look at tonight is, do I feel like nobody understands what I'm going through, that I'm on this island? Or do I have some things I could share with other people tonight that I found that I could continue to have social engagement, spiritual engagement with other people?
And how can we help people that might feel like they're on an island or isolated? How can we be an encouragement to them and help them connect?
We're running 4 or 5 groups here already through Zoom, so we even get to see people's faces,
Yeah.
And we've put the offer out there. Anybody would like to do that, we would love to help you do that. Maybe you have a group going and don't know the technology to do it. We have people here in this room that can help you do that.
Yeah. It's important, isn't it, that you realize it's important to see people's faces. And there are people that we see on a regular basis that it's been a couple of weeks now, and even if we've connected through a conference call, through telephone, through email, through texting, I miss your face. What other stuff have you seen that's kind of helped shape you in this really kind of crisis moment.
So, in thinking about what's going on and emotionally where I've been and where family is and where community is, I recognize that when this first started, my attitude took a real negative turn. I was really upset. We had to cancel the retreat, and church was called off. And it's not that I'm not excited to do things like explore new technologies. Those things do excite me. But I was really angry, and I didn't quite understand why. But some thinking about it, that feeling of I don't know what's coming next, I experienced that before when I was deployed to Iraq. And I was away from my wife for a year, and I was isolated. And there was people around me, but I was still isolated from the people I wanted to be around. And so now I was re-experiencing that, and it all kind of crashed at one moment. And now that I've had a little bit of time to process and step back, I'm like, okay, I know this feeling. I know what this is. But while that has helped me understand where I am emotionally, it's made me hurt for others. Because now everybody's experiencing something that I wish we didn't have to experience. That threat, that uncertainty, that absolute, I can't make any plans. And one of the scariest thoughts for me has been, when I was in the army, I just waited for orders. Now I'm a leader, and I'm in conversations about what do we tell people. And so I'm getting to experience it in a whole different way. And so that's sort of one of those things God's doing, informing me. And there's some moments where it's like, I don't want to lead, I want to run away. I want to go to my bunker and just hunker down and tell me when it's over, and we'll come out and we'll get back to life. But people deserve more than that. They need more than that. So I'm blessed because I have you all, and we get to kind of adventure through that unknown territory together. So the negative is having to experience that kind of pain again. The positive is, this time I'm not doing it without my wife at my side. You know, this time I'm not doing it without a church family around me. So us reaching out and doing this, I hope that even if it's just an hour on a Wednesday night or Sunday morning where you get a little bit of time on FaceTime, that it's a little bit more connection that makes us not feel so alone in the struggle.
So the encouragement in all of that is really, even though it's got to look different right now, we need community.
Absolutely.
We need life together.
I've seen a lot of neat things online, because that's the only place I can go anymore. And there's been some really neat things. You know, people were out in Italy on their balconies every night at a certain time, playing music and singing songs, and these are people who don't know each other normally, and they're coming together to try to unite for something. I saw people in Spain coming out at a certain time every day to do some exercising. I saw some ladies in their backyards. This one lady's out with a big megaphone and she's doing Zumba, and everyone's in their own backyard, and they're doing all these really neat things, and people have to try to connect in different ways. Another thing I've seen is like putting up Easter eggs in your windows in your neighborhood, and then having people drive around. I don't know if that can happen now, but people would drive around and look at your windows and see the Easter eggs, or see your teddy bears in there, or put messages up in your windows of hope and encouragement that that are going to be something that we need to hear. And one of the things someone in Italy was saying was it's music that's going to help get us through this. It's the art that's going to help get us through these things, the beautiful things in life. And when we can still continue to do those things, reach out and connect with other people, I think we're going to be able to carry that over even after this is over, because we're starting to create new communities now within our communities of people that we didn't know. And I think that's something that's really a positive out of all of this, is that there's an opportunity to try to reach out and develop more relationships in different ways now.
Well, John said two things, leadership and family. You know, it's almost with certainty, after God brings us home, that our children and grandchildren are gonna go through something like this again. They're gonna deal with it according to how we've dealt with it. What are we modeling to them? You know, are we selling out to our faith and bringing our family into that? You know, you mentioned spiritual formation. I think about all the times I say to myself, or I hear other people say, well, you know what, I would love to do my devotions, I'd love to do this, but, you know, I don't have time. Well, now you do. You don't have to pray in the car on the way to work now. You know, sometimes our kids don't see us going through our own spiritual process. Here's that opportunity not only for them to see you, but to include them in that. And it's living this thing out together. Not in fear, in concern, but not in fear. So there's a real opportunity here to bring your family to a place that you never thought they could be.
Great point. Tim, you were saying something when we were kind of prepping this earlier that I thought was really powerful. Can you share with us a little bit about what that was?
So I think for me it's interesting because what's been positive I think has also been negative. So the positive is I've had more time for reflection and more time to slow down and really process what's going on. And I think the positive of that is I've been able to spend more time in the Word and in prayer and kind of getting some of those pieces back where I want them to be. But I think the negative side to it is a lot of times when I'm reflecting, I can try to find peace within myself. Or saying like if I just can think it out in my own head, I can find peace. Or I'll look around me, I'll look to the news, or I'll look for other people to try to give me peace. And I was reading Colossians 3, where it says, verses 1 and 2, "Since then you have been raised with Christ, set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things above, not on earthly things." So I think what God's been teaching me is that peace isn't going to come from within me. Within me is a train wreck. Within me is worry, anxiety, fear, confusion, chaos. But if I can set my mind on what's above, in God is peace, and in God is strength, and in God is, to what you were saying, John, the security to not bunker up. Because I think that all of us are, at some moment are like, I just wish I could go in a corner, protect myself, maybe have some rations of food and hide. And I think the biggest blessing that God's been teaching me is just that I don't need to surmise peace on my own. I just need to think about where my thoughts are. And so I think really reflection is a positive and a negative. It's what I'm reflecting on.
Yep.
And it's where I let my mind go to.
It reminds me of that verse in Philippians of whatever's pure, whatever's holy. Think about those things. And so often the encouragement is the encouragement that we give ourselves and what we allow ourselves to think about.
Yep, absolutely.
I want to just take a minute and jump in. If you are watching us live, you can jump in and you can have questions, or you can jump in with comments too, because I'm watching what you have to say. So hi, Jason and Laura and Heather, because I see you guys. So if you have something you want to add, please bring it in and I'll bring it to the group.
Think about that idea of encourage one another, which we need right now. And my mind pretty quickly went to the passage in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29. It says, "Don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." And I thought about that sense of building one another up and encouraging one another, and how guilty I can be of that. Don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, especially in times when things are tense, when things are uncertain. And none of us have ever been through a government ordered stay home.
Mhm.
But how do I keep the words of my mouth focused on what's encouraging to build up other people as they have need? And I especially love the kind of personal, intentional nature of the verse, of what do I need to say to build Bob up, to be an encouragement to Bob, because it's going to look different than what I need to say to build John up and be an encouragement to John. And it calls me to be really intentional and other people focused in times like this. So I can think about not, all that junk that's going on in my head and my heart, but instead focus on what can I say to be an encouragement and a building up to Vicky
Mhm.
right now.
Just allowing people to be heard right now
Yeah,
is huge.
yeah.
And my wife works at the hospital, and your wife works at the hospital. And, seeing people constantly gowned up in goggles and masks. She had to wear a mask all day today for the first time. It wears on you. And if you're a person who's energized by being around people, this is extremely difficult. And when she comes home from work and sit, and I need to let her be heard, I have no answers. But she doesn't want my answers, right? She just wants me to hear her. I was in Giant the other morning, because unfortunately now I'm old enough to go in at 6 a.m. to do my shopping. And I'm waiting in line, people are trying to keep their 6 feet. And then one woman thought this guy was cutting in line because and they were all squabbling. So I just turned to the cashier and said, "How are you doing with all this?" And they just took a couple minutes to let me know how this was not easy.
Because when you carry all of that inside, just getting it out
Yeah,
makes you feel so much better, and then you're not carrying that weight anymore.
yeah.
So sometimes the most helpful thing we can do to build others up and encourage them is not speak at all, but listen.
Did you know listen and silent have the same letters?
I did not know that.
That's my teaching days. We had that on a poster in the classroom. Listen and silent have the same letters in them. I want to say something that Jenny Harden has said. I lived in the encouragement of people checking in on me and our family, and being able to do that for others too. It helps to not feel so alone. So just checking on each other.
Who was that?
Somebody named Jenny.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
I don't know.
But making a phone call or sending a postcard or driving by and honking, or I don't know, whatever it is, leaving chocolate on your doorstep, or there's a lot of different ways that we can check on each other. But I think something else that's important that we do is a verse that comes from Philippians 2:14, and I particularly don't like it, so this verse doesn't apply to me. It applies to everybody else, but it says, "Do everything without complaining or arguing." And that's really hard right now, because I got a lot of complaining, I got a lot of arguing I have, and it's hard. But I think if we're going to encourage one another, we have to stop the arguing, we have to stop the complaining. Whatever is happening out there is happening, and we have no control over that. But what we do have control over is our attitude and how we're viewing the situation and how we're encouraging one another to view the situation and to behave.
But my kids are home from school for 4 weeks.
Oh, I know, it's hard, and then they can't figure out how to log on to the computer, and oh
And
my
that's-
goodness.
And that's the struggle, isn't it, in that verse of, it's times like these when we are the most tense and the most stressed that our tendency is to be shorter with each other.
And
to
it's
be
usually with
snippy.
the ones you love the most.
Absolutely.
And those are the ones you're trapped with all day now. But if I change my mindset, instead of being trapped with them, I get to spend time with them, I get to encourage them, I get to intentionally build some family memories, some spiritual times in there.
You know, conflict resolution, if, as a family, we haven't come up with a way to deal with conflict, you're already in a hole. So this is a great time now, because space was a great way, you resolve the conflict, you kind of go, give each other space, and when you come back, you know, you can start processing that. You can't do that now. You have to resolve the conflict and stay in each other's midst while everybody's still kind of simmering and stewing and everything. So there's something right now that we probably need to work on, is our conflict resolution skills within our family, friends, and community.
Yeah, because the tensions are, for right now, they're probably going to keep increasing. More and more people are either working harder to deal with this, or they're being furloughed, or they're, you know, have a threat to their employment. And when there's a threat to your ability to provide for your family, that tension makes doing life really, really hard. And then to do it without grumbling, like, are you kidding?
Yeah.
We really have to keep our eyes set upwards, because otherwise it is, well, this is happening, this is happening. I mean, I hear, well, you have time. I feel like I have less time
Feel
now.
that way too.
I really do. I feel like I have less time because school's still happening, it's just changed format, but the way we're doing it has created more work. Trying to put things together so that we can do, it's not show up and gather together and have an hour together. It's the 4 or 5 hours prepping of how are we gonna do this hour so that we can have time together, which is not a complaint. It's a joy to do the work actually and be able to do it. But it's like, well, where did my time go? Oh, it went here, it went here, it went here. And so I'm not at home with the kids, but when I come home, they're kind of like, they've been together all day and they're exhausted from not having focused activity. It's kind of like the summertime has happened all over again, but early. And next week they start online school, at least my kids do.
Your Bethlehem does.
So there's some tension there. So I know there's a lot of changing. I used to teach stress management. Change equals stress. That's just a psychological thing. And we are experiencing daily change and radical change. So I know that everybody's stress level is here.
And how we remain aware of that and give each other even more grace than usual.
And some grace to your social distance.
You know, we talked about this affecting older people. You know, the older you get, the more you don't like change. Yet the older you get, the more life changes and you can't do anything about it.
And the faster the
Right.
perception of it.
So there's this daily tension as you get older. I don't like change even more than I did yesterday, yet my life has changed yet again today. So now you throw in a virus that makes people, in the later season of life, even more vulnerable, and you throw that change that's already there already, the anxiety level just goes even higher.
I want to jump in and say hi to Mrs. P. Thanks for watching. And Laura Walzak says she feels like she has no time right now, working from home and homeschooling. And Jen Krause, same here. Laura says, I'm doing more meal prep and dishes than ever because we're home all the time now. My kitchen is constantly filled with dirty dishes because we're eating at home all the time now. Every meal is there.
Wow.
I had to fix my sink, and I kind of wasn't sure of something, and they ran the dishwasher, and the sink was no longer plugged into the drain, and so there was just water shooting all over the house today while I was here.
More stress.
And it was like, oops.
And all of that is life.
Yeah.
And to go back to your passage, how do we do that? how do we do normal life without grumbling and complaining? Because I'm not real good at that.
Not either.
How do we do life in March of 2020 that way? And I'm reminded of something, Bob, you were saying before we went live. Paul's writing that from prison. And compared to what Paul was experiencing when he wrote that, my life is a breeze. My life is a piece of cake.
That uncertainty, that threat to life that we're maybe experiencing, that I was talking to Tim earlier today, the illusion of safety and security has been kind of ripped away from the whole of America and the whole world right now, and so everybody's kind of reacting. That's exactly Paul's world. And yet, what is he telling us?
When I think, to speak to your point of how we're encouraging each other in this season, I was thinking about the verse in where it talks about casting our cares on God. I think I'll either cast my anxiety on him or I'll cast it around me. And that's not going to encourage someone else. So I think thinking through the idea of giving God the anxiety and the fears we have so we don't cast them on those around us. And also just remembering that God sees us and knows what we're struggling with and what we're going through. So I think a lot of times for me when I complain, it's because I want other people to know my struggle. And I want to know that I'm seen and that I'm heard, because it validates it somehow, I think. And
You're affirmed.
yeah, you're affirmed that way. And I think just remembering that God sees our struggle and he sees what we're doing and he sees the good, the bad, and the ugly of it, I think can take away sometimes the need to complain. Obviously we're going to get short with each other and complain, but I think those two things can help that process of, I know for me, if my anxiety doesn't go to God, it shoots off sideways at everyone around me.
But I think it's important to remember that the feelings we have right now are how we feel. And we feel stressed out, we feel anxious, and these are feelings that I think are okay right now. But we can't dump them on other people. We have to take all of that stress and that fear and that anxiety, and we have to go straight to God with it, because he's the only one that can handle it and who can take it and actually take it away.
And that's what triggered in my mind was, think about Lamentations. And there is a worship that is just collectively let us pull our complaints together and give them to God. Not dumping them on each other. Hey, pastor, this is what's wrong here and you need to fix it. And hey, Tim, you need to fix it. No. We're coming together and saying, God, we are suffering right now. This is what's happening to your people right now. Won't you help us? And that, I was talking about earlier, my definition of what worship is radically being challenged and changed. Not just by school, but by this very event. I think it and in a good way, it's having to expand to maybe go and accept, you know what, maybe sometimes we need to have a worship service that is letting us jointly go to God with, Lord, we need a new roof. Lord, and let's do that in a worshipful way as his people. Lord, this virus,
The people in grief shared, we spent a week about lamenting. They really didn't know what it was and didn't know it was okay to say, God, this is how I feel.
Yeah.
Because he knows how you feel anyway. So and like any good father, he just wants to hear it. Lord, this is how I feel. And you gave him, you're giving him the okay to talk to God about, I'm not happy.
Because sometimes I think we hear, let's do it without grumbling, like I can't take this to God. I shouldn't feel this way. That's not, I think, what those verses are saying.
Right.
It's saying what you just said. Let's focus it up here and say, I'm not going to throw it on you. Let's throw it to God and say, Lord, only you can take care of the burdens of my heart right now. And then in doing that collectively, we do hear it. And then we may find a way to help each other bear that burden.
I want to jump in here with something Krista says. She says, I've been encouraged by the way our community has stepped up in a time of need. We have had a plea out to need blood, the way people have stepped up to that call. I also got a call from Bruce just to check on how I was, and he prayed with me, and it was so great to be able to connect. Thanks, Krista.
It
And
is
thanks,
really,
Bruce.
really amazing the way people are responding to care for one another. And got an email about, hey, the blood banks are low. Can the church do something to help? Yeah, we can do that. And by the time we were able to put something together, the date that was given us was in April because time slots had filled up. And not that the need isn't ongoing, but the response was that quick. And that was really encouraging to me to see people saying, okay, here's something real and meaningful and helpful I can do in this time.
I hope we'll hear from more people about the phone calls that went out. My wife took the 7 people that we had for our family to contact, and she enjoyed making those phone calls. And I think it's a shame it took a pandemic for us to do that. And I hope that we will consider maybe making it a little bit more normal to call one another, to reach out. And if we have to make it a thing like it is, so that it gets done, I don't know. I think I want the church, I want people that are watching now to tell us what they think. Do they want more of that?
Well, I think that's a great point of whenever we return to whatever normal looks like, what are the good things that we are experiencing right now that we do want to continue? Look, you and I were talking this morning, you said, I'm in more relational contact with people in my present and in my past that I've been in years.
Yeah.
And I jokingly said, and we've got to end it, you know? We gotta get back to normal.
I can't have these relationships, I gotta get back to work.
I've probably done more ministry in the past week than I did the whole month before,
And
without even leaving my house.
right. And there's that very real sense of I don't want to go back to a normal that leaves us alone and disconnected. I don't want a new normal to be us chatting in a room with a Facebook camera on. Because let's be honest, it's kind of weird.
Only a little bit.
But I do want the new normal to be, hey, let's make sure people are plugged in and connected.
Well, and I think what's cool about what Krista shared and what you had said about the email you got, like, hey, we could help with that. I think Andy Stanley says, do for one what you wish you could do for thousands. So I think what we're hearing stories of is we could be overwhelmed by the need and not step. So you're hearing these cool stories of, well, I can't help every person in the world, but I can help this person.
This is Bob Starfish story.
The starfish story, yeah.
Or, you know, I can't encourage everyone. So it's cool to hear stories like that of people stepping up for, even if it's for one person that's making an impact, versus sitting back and saying, well, the need is too big or the problem's too big.
Or the concern is too big. The risk is too great. And we want to be mindful. I loved what you said earlier of, I'm not isolating to protect myself, I'm isolating to protect other people. And it goes back to that mindset of how do we be encouraging and thinking, it's easy to say, I have to back away to protect myself and lose sight of all of the things, the things I wish I could do for thousands. What can I do for one?
You know?
Because there are real opportunities in this minute. Jenny had a conversation, she had to go to the store for a couple of things today, and we know people that neither one of them drive. And so part of going to the store was, what do you need? And we all know somebody in that situation.
A little update here. Laura says the only way I can explain the calm that I have felt in all this craziness is the Holy Spirit. And Krista says it's about connecting with people. And Jan says maybe we need to learn some lessons and set a new normal when things change. Marissa says, I feel like we forgot how we felt after September 11th, and now this is a huge reminder that people are what matters.
In our care groups, we use that term all the time, the new normal. Because more often than not, whether it's a divorce or a physical loss, somebody inevitably is gonna say, are things back to normal yet?
It's never
Well, there's a hole in my normal this big.
Yeah.
So what is that new normal that God has for me? And we're in the same situation. When we come out of this, our families, all of us are never gonna be the same. And it's either gonna be in a good way or a bad way. And we have the power to decide which way that's gonna go. Even with the word isolation, I kind of cringe when we say even to protect other people. But there's no other way to put it. So are we isolating in a way to protect other people? Or are we isolating in a way that's going to bring us into depression and going from being alone to being lonely? You know, there's solitude, isolation, there's alone and lonely. And we have the power to decide which one of those things we're going to be.
Well, and I think what you're saying about the new normal fits exactly what you were talking about changing our perspective and point of view. As Christians, spiritual formation wise, we should always be looking for a new normal. We should be asking God to rip our hearts up, to create a new normal for us on a regular basis so that we can grow to be the people He wants us to be. But this is hard, and that is hard. But I think why do we meet every Sunday? Well, one of the things that we meet for is to have that happen, right? To remind us, because if we don't, it's so easy to plug into what's going on at work or what's going on here that we get worried about production, not people. And when we start worrying about productivity and not people, we lose ourselves. Not just others, but we lose ourselves.
It's really a great point. You mentioned, why it's important for us to meet on Sunday. There's a verse in Hebrews that I think you read it last week when we were doing this. In Hebrews chapter 10:25 that says, don't give up assembling together as some are in the habits of doing. And we're having to radically rethink how we do that right now. But what I find far more powerful and important is the verse right before that, which says, let us consider how we may encourage one another towards love and good deeds. And that's the whole why behind we're not supposed to give up meeting together. Not because God desires a full building, although I do think that brings Him great joy. Because God has designed us to come together, to spur one another on, to encourage one another, to build one another up towards love and good deeds. And so that new normal
To help build the new normal.
has to look like we need each other. We need to come together to worship, because that's how God designed us, to grow into the people He created us to be.
So it's being with other people that help encourage me to focus on the things that are true and right and noble and pure and lovely and praiseworthy and excellent. There's one more, I think. I have to sing this song to remember it all.
For
Anyway,
you kids out there, if you could let us know.
if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about these things. But it's the people around me that help shape my thinking.
Yeah.
And if people
Absolutely.
around me are complaining and are grumbling and are, saying that this is, I don't know, whatever, but they're bringing me down too. And there's an appropriate place for that. And we can have appropriate conversations like, hey, John, I gotta talk to you, I'm just having a really bad day. And, but there's also God who wants to listen to him, and listen to us. And I think when we are reaching out to other people with phone calls or with texting or video chatting or snail mail or whatever, there are ways to connect with people and, you know, maybe we gotta figure out how to order stamps for everybody or something and go old school, Pony Express or something. But to try to connect with people, because Carol says some of it is this hits single people hard. And it's hard for someone who's at home without family. Like, my kids are driving me insane. But I can't pass them off to anybody right now. But I need to change my mindset and realize that really is a blessing, that I've got my kids there. Because the other part of me is like, oh man, I would love to have the house all to myself. and finding that balance.
And after a little bit of time of that,
yeah,
like, wow.
Yeah, I would want that back again. So, you know, you've got single friends. Let's check on them. Let's make some phone calls. Let's figure out how to video chat with them.
It's that perspective thing. I mean, I went to the Grand Canyon, and I was there, and it was awesome, and I was awed by it. But the one thought that came to me is, I really wish my family was here to see this. Like, in that moment, sometimes I just can't wait to get away from the kids, but when really important stuff happens, when something really cool happens, I don't want them to be away from me. I want them to be there experiencing that really cool thing.
Yeah.
And so remembering that in those moments of high tension and stress, I need people saying things like you just said to remind me of that. And not like one time because it was this really great quote from a book, because I'm going to forget that and move on from it. But I mean like daily in our lives saying, hey, you know, I heard you say it this way, but is that what you really think? No, I really think they're wonderful. Well, then let's say that.
So all those really great books, I keep quoting you.
Meaningless.
You know, it's important too. You know, for every draining person we have in our life, we probably need like 10 nurturing people. And, you know, just in normal course of life, you know, you have those people who pour into you, those people who are neutral. You might go to a ball game with them, they don't give anything to your life, they don't think anything away. And then there's people that, you know, EGR, extra grace required, that just always have a need or are always negative. Now more than ever, we have to go to those nurturing people in our life and keep that connection for them and for us, because that's what builds it. We build each other up. Because those people are always going to be in our life, and right now, there's more of them than ever, and now they have, these are legitimate needs now. These aren't what the next crisis is. So they have a negative mindset already. You know, it's our mission.
So we've been talking about it a little bit, and it hits on what you were saying, but what are those things that other people are doing that's encouraging and building you up right now? What are you doing to build other people up?
The answer on Facebook is cats.
Cats?
Yes, everybody, we all just need more cats for companionship. Although someone says they're terrible conversationalists.
Have they met my cat? Cats.
I'm good.
Yeah, I think.
You've got your dogs, that wouldn't work.
Well, I do understand now why dogs want to run out the door when it's open. I'm starting to realize that.
Yeah.
I think for me, one of the most encouraging things I've had in a while is an hour today to chat with Tim about a sermon series idea. And it was so encouraging, I think, because it was such a normal thing to do. When so much of what we do right now is different than what we were doing a month ago. That was a very normal thing to do. It was very encouraging because of that.
Yeah, I think going off that, yesterday, so me and my mom have been taking like an hour walk every day just to try to get, because we're allowed to do that even in this, even after 8 o'clock tonight, you're still allowed to walk.
As long as you're 6 feet apart.
Yeah, so yeah, we're usually about 6 feet apart. But I think it was cool yesterday. We just went to this. Nashville's a really weird place because there's like a downtown, but then there's like it gets rural and like cornfields.
You realize you just said that live on Facebook.
Yes.
Yes,
I
I
did
did.
home tonight.
That's right.
Unfriended by half the
All the Nashville
city.
people.
Pitchfork's coming.
That's Tim Gray,
What do you mean?
F-R-A-Y.
Yes, correct. That's why you don't tape small groups, because you say dangerous things. But like, it's this weird place where you can go from loud to like nothing. And I didn't even know we had cornfields in Nashville, to be honest with you. and we just kept hiking up this road and down this, and
You
but it
don't
was
notice much, do you? You didn't know the banners were in the
I don't,
sanctuary?
clearly.
We all just drive through and ignore Nazareth too,
That's okay. There is good things that come out of it, but I think
That's John Spading, S-P-A-D.
You did have something.
yeah, where I was
something
going
to
with
say.
it is there was this really cool moment of like that's been an encouragement to me of like having lived away from home for such a long time and then realizing like those are special moments that are different in it, and I think
Yeah.
I love that verse where it says you spur another towards good deeds. I think God's showing me that He still has a purpose in this. Not only is He present with me, but there's relationships that He's letting get stronger, and there's moments that I didn't get to have before that I get to have now.
Yeah, there's something beautiful about taking a walk with your mom.
Yeah.
Like whenever will we ever have a chance to do something like that? I mean, that's, I'm sitting here thinking, my mom's been gone for 8 years now. I would do anything to be able to take a walk with my mom.
Yeah, for sure.
The Facebook police are coming after you. That's word on the street. And Beth had said, I didn't know if you wanted to do that.
Yeah, unless we wanted to do that Sunday, but
Okay.
that's a David so you can see.
Oh, okay. We're sharing Krista's comment about bringing in the chair, just so everyone knows what's happening here. Beth said something that I want to make sure that we mention too, is that friends in nursing homes are feeling really isolated right now as well. And so in our trying to connect with people, we want to make sure that we're remembering people who are even more isolated in our society.
And even more fearful.
Yeah, I saw a beautiful thing today. It was some grandma's birthday or anniversary. It must have been an anniversary. And so the kids went out on the sidewalk outside the nursing home and drew pictures for a grandma who's up on the 3rd floor. And it was really a sweet way to try to connect with people. Some of this is dependent on the weather,
Sure.
and it's hard to go out when
Right.
you don't want to draw chalk drawings when it's raining because that's not going to work. But there's different ways to try to connect and really thinking outside the box to reach out and encourage one another.
Well, I think for me that's been one of the most encouraging things about this season is for ministry, for how we do church. Right now there is no box. And
Everything's out of the box.
everything's out of the box. And let's just try stuff. So what we're doing right now, we're just trying something because that's all we can do right now. And that can be intimidating, but also can be really encouraging and a lot of fun. So Krista had a comment about the chair. And for a little bit of context, when we started this journey on doing life together, especially when it's uncomfortable, we started with the recognition that we're called to be peculiar people. And we've all got those peculiar people in our lives. And for some people, we are those peculiar people. And we're reminded to make room at the table, because this was supposed to be table talk. To make room at the table for that person that we find peculiar. That person that, Bob, you mentioned extra grace required. And we all have those in our life, and we are that person for someone else.
Yeah, this comment right here is for you and me. Listen to those who talk a lot.
Yeah.
That's
And so we invited people to write a phrase, write a word, draw a picture that reminded us of the importance of keeping an open spot at the table. Because at Jesus' table, everyone's invited.
the whole of the laws right here. The comment is love each other.
Love each other. And some of them seem, in a month, to have become really silly. More than one person wrote politics. And what a thing, especially today, for it to be hard to make room at the table for.
This right here has me in tears, because I look forward to it. It says break bread together.
Yeah.
It's interesting how I took that for granted 2 weeks ago. It's like, okay, well, we're gonna eat dinner together.
Mm.
No big deal.
Here we are
Yeah.
Wednesday night.
Here we are. I had to cook my own dinner tonight, so first of all, that's a bummer.
No mac and cheese.
Yeah. Thank you, Carol Hill, by the way.
You know, but I think part of our perspective is that we're missing the things that we took for granted.
Mhm.
Was breaking bread together and being able to be face to face with each other.
You know, small groups. I mean, my whole life has been about helping people take the next right step. And one of the things that gets taken for granted are those times we can get together in small groups for whatever reason. You know, well, I'm a little tired tonight or this, you know. I think we're gonna take a new look at that. That's gonna be part of the new normal. That we know now, that opportunity to sit together looking at each other for an hour a week is something we can't take for granted anymore.
Something else on here says, maybe we could be extra encouraging if we think about their love language. What means of communication would be the most meaningful to them? And that goes back to your verse,
Yeah.
speaking in a way that's helpful to them would be, I don't know, that made me think of that.
Yeah.
And you know, physical touch is one of the love languages, isn't it?
And people are really gonna be, especially single people, especially people in nursing homes, are gonna really be struggling with that right now. I'm really moved by the visual in Krista's idea of a seat in the room for everyone that can't be in the room right now. But yeah, that's a great point of that love language idea. It really goes back to, what do you need to be encouraged and built up?
Krista used the internet to make me cry.
You know, it's interesting, we spend time in relationships trying to get, wanting to be loved the way we want to be loved. And it was going back to what you were saying, isolating yourself to not infect others. When it comes to love, we're always looking for somebody to love us the way we want to be loved without recognizing if we are proactive in trying to figure out how that person wants to be loved. In the end, we're going to be loved the way we want to be loved. That's not the end game. That's just the fruit of selfless love.
Yeah.
Well, we may have to pick up other languages too, because physical touch is part of my love language. Like hugging my kids, and even, you know, my friends. And so you add 6 feet of distance, and that's rough. You multiply that by a couple weeks, and it's like no one's speaking my language anymore at all. Then you add to it not meeting together in groups, and it's like, okay, this is hard. And it only adds to that kind of bunker down pressure.
Yeah.
One, what you were saying, Vicky, about being creative and imaginative about how we do it, I think our imagination, we can be very imaginative and creative about how doomsday is going to happen out of everything, or the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's flip that and use that creativity to bless people and they show people love, because the imagination's there in a positive and a negative way. So I love how you were saying being creative about how you're expressing it. Like, we have that creativity.
Yeah.
And
that
one
ability
of
to imagine that.
the images that came out of China early on was people in like blow up costumes, like animal
The
costumes.
T-Rex
Yeah,
costume.
but like those people, but that's what they did. They put those on to walk around. And it wasn't just to give you a physical barrier, but it also lightened the mood. And I thought, it was one of those ways to come up with a creative way to embrace the problem instead of,
We could dress up like the guys that race at the Iron Pigs game. You could be the
Yes.
bacon, I'll be the sausage, you could be the hot dog.
and then we can have church
Yeah.
inside of our little
But,
building.
but you know, here's the
You
thing
have
about.
one more?
Do I have one more?
Because we're about at 8 o'clock already.
Yeah, we've got some people that love hugs, some people that aren't hugs. But there are different love languages.
Yes.
There's physical touch, there's quality time, there's words of affirmation, there's gifts. Is there something else I'm forgetting?
Acts of service, words of affirmation,
Yeah.
physical touch, receiving gifts,
Quality time.
quality.
Yeah.
That was on the.
Yeah. So physical touch doesn't have to be your thing, but there are other, especially now, that can't be your thing.
I smell a small group.
You had a great scripture verse in Corinthians, 2 Corinthians. Why don't you
Yeah.
share for us?
We were talking about Paul in 2 Corinthians 4:8-12. He said, "We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, not in despair, persecuted but not abandoned, struck down but not destroyed. We always carry around our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body." You know, Paul's basically saying, I know you think you're at the end of your rope, but you're really not. Because here's kind of what I went through. Let's see. I have worked much harder, been in prison more frequently, flogged more severely, exposed to death again and again. 5 times I received from the Jews 40 lashes minus 1. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was pelted with stones. 3 times I was shipwrecked. Spent a night and a day in the open sea, constantly on the move. Been in danger in rivers, in dangers from bandits, in dangers from my fellow Jews, in danger from Gentiles, in danger of the city, the country, the sea, and in danger from false believers. I have labored and toiled, and often gone without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst, and often gone without food. I have been cold and naked. Besides everything else, I face daily the pressure of my concerns for all the churches. And when he wrote this, there was still more to come in his life. This was his 3rd mission trip, and he endured all these things. So when I read this, this gave me perspective. I may have to stay in my house for a month, but I had never been flogged, and I've never been beaten, and I've never been any of these things. And this is the same guy that wrote the book of Philippians, based on joy, as you said, from a dungeon. So he's just saying you're not at the end of your rope, because you sin and you struggle, but God will never abandon you, ever.
And I love that image of, so the life of Christ can shine in us. And that's why we talk about encouraging and how we can build one another up, so the life of Christ can shine in us. I'm gonna close our time up now. I'm gonna pray in a second, but I want everybody to remember it's okay that none of us have been here before. We could spend an hour reading Bible verses like this. I want to leave you with Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 8. The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid and do not be discouraged. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time together with my friends in this room and on the internet. Thank you for the opportunity to meet this way. And Lord, in this season, help us to not be afraid. Help us to remember that it is you that goes before us. Help us to remember that you are with us. Help us to remember that you have not and will not leave us. And I pray that that gives us hope. I pray that we will all be encouraged from it. And in it, I pray that we will all consider how we can encourage others to love and good deeds. In the name of your Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thanks for participating on Facebook. Thanks to Carol and Courtney and Krista and Denise and Gary. And if anybody needs a T-Rex costume, Laura's got one we can borrow.
Is it in a 3X?
Good night, everyone. Blessings.